evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and welcome to Dance Talks. I am Angie Lane. I'm the Chief Development Officer at Houston Ballet, and we're delighted that you made it out tonight. Before I introduce our panel, just a couple housekeeping things. We ask you to turn off your smartphones and your smartwatches so you can get a quiet environment. If you need to exit the theater at any time, please use the exits on the side just behind the seats. This evening we'll be taking a deep dive into Dwight Rhoden's world premiere of The Lightning Round, which appears alongside Stanton Welch's The Four Seasons, Saint Disha's Elapse, and George Balanchine's Tchaikovsky's Pas de Deux during 4 Seasons, June 6th to the 16th. Moderating our panel tonight is Houston Ballet's Artistic Director, Julie Kent. Julie joined the company as Artistic Director, as I know you all know, alongside Stanton at the top of the season. Before making Houston home, she danced with American Ballet Theater, and she was the Artistic Director for the Washington Ballet. Thank you, Julie, for being here tonight. On our panel, on our distinguished panel, is Dwight Rhoden. He is the choreographer behind Houston Ballet's world premiere, The Lightning Round. He is a highly sought after and award-winning choreographer who worked with numerous dance companies, television programs, and celebrities. And he is the founding artistic director and choreographer of Complexions Contemporary Ballet and has created more than 100 ballets for Complexions. Please join me in welcoming. Also joining us are Corps de Ballet members Zoe, Lucich, and Saul, Newport. Zoe is originally from Marion County, California, and received her training from San Francisco Ballet School. She joined the company in 2021 and was promoted to Corps de Ballet in 2022. Saul is originally from London and trained at Royal Ballet School, New Zealand School of Dance, Houston Ballet Academy, and was in HB2. He joined the company in 2022. Please welcome Zoe and Saul.
Thanks, Angie. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for what I think is the final dance talk of the season, especially after such dramatic weather this afternoon. It turned out to be a beautiful evening, and I'm really glad to see all of you. I wasn't quite sure what the turnout might be, but once again, you Houstonians have just come through in a big way, so thank you. For those of you who have not yet seen our Ireland program that opened this past weekend, please come this coming weekend. It was just a really impressive opening, 3 different casts, and they all brought the ballet to life so uniquely, beautifully, and definitely worth seeing. But we're here tonight to talk about our closing program of the season, and we're so fortunate that Dwight Rhoden is here once again to talk with us about his piece now that it's finished. We were fortunate that he was willing to share his time back in January when he first came and had a lovely, wonderful conversation with Lauren Anderson, where we learned about his beginnings in dance in Ohio and how by great fortune you found your way to Dayton Contemporary Dance Theater and how that led you to New York and Alvin Ailey. And what we didn't comment about, that's what we met, was in the 80s in New York when we were both sort of at the beginning of our professional career. And somewhere in this world exists some photos of us walking down the catwalk at Limelight doing a fashion show. So anybody wants to do like a deep dive in Google Photos, they're there somewhere. Anyway.
I couldn't wait to walk with her.
It was so glamorous, I'll tell you that. It was a great show. I'm also thrilled that we have Zoe and Saul with us, that you get to hear from some of the younger artists in our company. They're both so interesting. They both had fabulous seasons, a variety of roles. I mean, really the whole spectrum. Zoe is from California, I think Angie mentioned, and a second-generation dancer. Her mother was a colleague of mine and Stanton's and in the San Francisco Ballet. And Saul, while he was born in London, he's a New Zealander, and my mother is also from South Island of New Zealand, and so they just, every single dancer and person in this organization has such a unique story about how they came to dance or how they came to be a part of this. And so anytime we can shed some light on all the individual stories, I'm so happy to do so. But more specifically, we're going to speak about the lightning round, which I can't remember if you had titled it when you were here in January. But that is, you did have, from our previous conversations, you did have an idea and sort of a concept when you first came. And I think just to refresh us, can you go back to sort of how you came about the idea, and when you arrived here, was your sort of musings and ideas, did you find that they were a match for your first time at Houston Ballet, or did you have to make some adjustments?
So, good evening, everybody. It's so nice to be here with you guys tonight. So I did walk in with the concept of the lightning round, so that was always considered the working title, and I didn't want to commit to the title quite yet, just because I wanted to see how, as you said, would it match with Houston Ballet and myself in the room together making this new work. And it matched, thankfully. I mean, you know, we could have shifted because the dancers really direct everything, to be honest. Their energy, their skill set, their personalities, the flavor they bring to the work, to the movement, because I can teach any phrase of movement to them and they can take it and it will have their own individual interpretation, and it also gives me ideas. And I was telling the audience last time I did one of these dance talks that I try to get out of the way sometimes and just let things happen, because some beautiful things can happen in the rehearsal studio if you give them permission to sort of emerge, come out, happen. And I tried to make an environment. We had to work. You know, we had to get this done. There's always a deadline. So herein lies the concept, I think. The lightning round is kind of a concentrated period of time where we try to get as much as we can done in that frame, in that time frame. And that becomes the impetus for how we move about our lives. So I guess in many ways it might be part of my life. 2 years ago I moved from New York to LA, and I'm bi-coastal, truly bi-coastal, which is, it sounds great on paper. It sounds amazing, and there's a lot of traveling, it's very difficult, you have to be organized. But you know, feeling the world that we live in now is so complex, challenging, and I think that I was influenced, I tend to be influenced by what's going on around me. I figured the dancers are experiencing the same world that I'm experiencing from their own perspective and vantage point, of course. However, I would be hard-pressed to think that our lives don't feel really jam-packed sometimes. I think almost everybody can feel that. So that is the concept for the lightning round, and within this, I guess it's about a 32-minute ballet, we see all of these different configurations, situations, relationships unfold. We see them being challenged, and hopefully by the end we see them working themselves through those challenges in various ways. So I wanted to do a ballet. When Stanton asked me originally to do a ballet, I wanted to do something where I met the dancers right where they were. And that was really all I walked in with, and the lightning round, and then that. That was them. And they gave me a lot to work with. As you know, these dancers are fantastic. So there was no problem there. Definitely had to get on board with style and all of that, but just was a pleasure, has been a pleasure.
I had the pleasure of watching the piece in its entirety today for the first time, and I absolutely loved it. And everything that you just said came through so clearly, but so beautifully. Like all of, when you see it, all of what Dwight's saying will make perfect sense. The other thing that I did peek in weeks ago when you were creating, and I forgot, you know, most people don't remember you as a dancer, but I do. And I was like, oh, there are little things you were doing, and it just made
There are not many people in the world who saw me on stage.
I know. Well, I was one of them. And it made me so happy to see you dancing and making movement. And it really, it was, I wasn't expecting it, and it just really hit me like, oh my goodness. Anyway, so that was my little share. But the other aspect that was interesting about how this piece came to be was that it was created over 3 different, well, you've been here 3 times. January was a little bit cut short because COVID is still here sometimes. So that made your visit, you know,
challenging.
Yeah, you got 2/3 of your time instead of the whole time, and then you were here for 2 weeks a few weeks ago, and you finished the piece, and then now we have all of the final preps, texts, and dresses. And so, is this a typical process for you, or has this been unusual, or?
It's pretty typical. It is. It's pretty typical. I tend to like about 4 weeks in the studio with the dancers, and then a production week. That's an ideal situation. More and more, with especially large companies as busy as like the Houston Ballet is, with multiple programs and obligations throughout the year, you know, you really work to get the time. I know you guys do the schedule. I mean, you don't do the scheduling, but you invite the artist and
Carve up the pie.
carve up the pie, exactly. Yeah, it's pretty typical. It's pretty typical.
And your cast is 16 dancers? Is it 8 men and 8 women?
Mm-hmm.
So I remember when you first came and what you shared with us at your previous dance talk was how impressed you were with the company, how many great dancers. And so was it, did you originally intend for it to be such a large cast, or, and also what's your usual process for 1 cast, 2 casts, etc.?
It was unusual. Well, I walked in with thinking it was going to be 7 couples, and I thought I had sort of spatially sort of figured out my numbers and how I might move them in a creative way. And when I got here, I kind of fell in love with 2 other dancers that I didn't necessarily think were going to be in it, but then they ended up being, I'll say who they are, it's Eureka and Chase. In that first cast, like I wasn't sure that it was going to be the right fit, and then not that they couldn't do it, but for this sort of composition, and I was immediately knew that I had to, and that it is now 16. So I called my designer and said, "It's not 14, it's 16." You know, and well, actually, I think I think I might have sent either you or Stanton an email just to make sure we're good with that. You guys were fine with it. More people dancing.
Yeah, and I think that's just that's part of the magic, is you walk in and then someone or something sparks your ideas and energy on that.
And I have to say the dancers here, and yeah, we all know how good they are, but they're also very different. Every one of them. I mean, you mentioned that earlier. They come with their own stories, but they look different, they move different, but they can move together and find that chemistry. But they also are, they were inspiring. It was nice to be in a room full of so many different types of people, body types, all of it. It was nice.
Well, that's a perfect segue, because I was going to ask you about working with the dancers. And one of the more specific questions was about if you can address specific strengths of the company or qualities. And how have they brought unexpected elements to your choreography, your original concept?
Beautifully trained. Yeah. Beautifully trained. Yes, and different. They come from different schools, but you definitely see a cohesion here. And I think that's a strength because there's a vibe, I don't have the better word, a vibe, a look, a feel for the Houston Ballet that is definitively the Houston Ballet to me. And I get to see, because I work in a lot of different companies, I get to see sort of a panoramic view of ballet in America sometimes. And I just, and I think the other strength here was, or I want to say a quality that I enjoy, is that they were open. There was like not 1 ounce of resistance in the room. And when you come in with, you don't know my movement yet, it's extremely physical, athletic, I would say, in some ways. But they possess all the tools that they need to deliver it. But it's a different way. It's a different way of delivering the material. It's not anything they don't know, they're not trained to do, but it's a different way in and out of shapes and movement and dancing. And this company was so open and ready, and even when they were uncomfortable, and they were, you know, as we were making things, and as the process continued, even with that uncomfortability, they were with me, and I felt their support. And you know, with any choreographer, we've been in millions of processes. That is really, number one, very, very valuable to do that. And their personalities are even coming through more now than it did back then, because now they know it. It's theirs. It's no longer mine, it's theirs. And so they are now really digging it, and that's exciting to watch.
Well, of course, those are all the things that Stanch and I are so proud to hear, because it's certainly how we feel about our dancers as well. And they're, I think one of the things that you picked up on about that vibe or that whatever is how our company takes class every day. It's that all of us get on the same page for an hour and a half or an hour and 15 minutes. And you see how everybody works so respectfully and so focused and full. It's not kind of a, I'm kind of here, kind of not, or I'm all over the place. Everybody is in it. And what that does is ground the organization, all the dancers for the rest of their day, because the rest of the day they're going to be exploring all kinds of different movement and narrative, non-narrative, etc. But it's that every day, the way the company works is exceptional.
So transfers. I mean, I've been a director for 30 years, and what they do in their class completely reflects what you see once we put it on stage. And sometimes for young dancers, it's hard for them to get that, because sometimes you just don't really feel like taking class. You know, like when you're working 6 days a week, you know, you've got performances, or 5 days a week even, and you're just working. You know, you don't feel sometimes like, oh, not another plie. No, but it's a ritual.
It is.
And you know, that's that discipline, and you guys certainly have it, because it transfers into the rehearsals.
Yeah, and that trust and communication, like I'll go where you take me, is also just, I mean, that trust is what's necessary in any creative process. And our dancers are so willing to just hold your hand and go. And it's really, really inspiring. So now let's hear from them. So Zoe and Saul, we'd love to hear about your experience working with Dwight in the studio, and how he has conveyed to you all the concept of lightning round. And was there any specific either language that he used, or techniques or exercises that he asked for you to explore that may have been something new, based different than other times you've worked with choreographers?
It's
closer to your mouth.
Okay. It's
Yeah.
been wonderful. We're really lucky here that you guys bring in amazing choreographers to work with, and you never know who's going to walk through the door. But Dwight walked in, and immediately I was like, this is cool. I want to do this. And he's a lovely human, first of all, not only a talented choreographer, but you make us feel safe and seen, and that makes me want to try even harder for you, because, yeah. I don't know, Saul can jump into a little of the process. It was, yeah, challenging.
No, everything Zoe said I also agree with. Dwight creates the most amazing environment in the room, and it just allows the dancers and everyone in the room to go on that journey with each other. And it started with a week in January, and we didn't start by starting at the top and worked through the piece. We started with just diving into Dwight's movement language. We did phrases, we did chunks of movement to learn the style that he wants to see, and that really helped then when we made the piece, because we were both on the same page, because we knew what he was looking for. It's a very expansive.
Yeah. It's ballet, but to the extreme. I mean, you're in an arabesque, but he wants it hyper arched, or you can be in a susu, but your butt's way back there and your chest is over there. And it's not like we don't, like you're saying, class, we're very linear and we're focused, and it's, straight up and down. And so when he came, I think it was important for all of us to get into your movement style so you could see who could do it, and also so we could understand how to move that way. And Jillian, his assistant, was very helpful too. She's beautiful. She would really do it full out, and that, for me, visual is everything. I feel like if I watch something, I understand that that's what I want to.
You didn't like me doing it?
No.
I liked it.
No, you're beautiful too. She's a tall redhead. It really helps when you have and yeah, now that we have the piece, we're really diving into what our feeling throughout each section, because you really, he said it's kind of like a game, and it does feel like, in my head, it feels almost like a board game, and you're going through the different lands of human emotions. And we do the same phrase sometimes in different sections, but because the undertone and the music is completely different, your body changes the way you do it.
So building on that, can you tell us a little bit more about your specific roles, or how you see your specific roles? And I as I said, I watched the rehearsal today, and what I have found so fascinating is that it sounds somewhat trite or formulaic, but literally they're discovering new voices, right? Like, I'm like, oh, Saul, he's doing this solo, and what you see is that a choreographer is giving a dancer food, language, movement language, and then through that, they're developing an opinion an informed opinion that then they produce result. And so you see growth before your eyes. You see individual opinions, and that is that's at the end of the day what we go to see. see on the stage as you go up and you see somebody communicate something. So I think both of them, from my point of view, are just making so much growth and development. But I'd love to hear from your point of view about how you see your role in the work and how you individually and specifically, and then maybe in a bigger picture.
Yeah, well, one of the themes within the lightning round was kind of, yeah, human emotions and, you know, and the trials of life, how you kind of navigate that. And so I feel like my role within the piece is the kind of optimism that even if something bad happens, you know, it's how you think about it, how you react to that, and the hope that it'll get better. And yeah, the word optimism is one that I think about, especially before my solo, and the idea that kind of, you know, you can get through anything. So.
I think also, Saul, that's what you showed me, and that's why you're doing that moment, because that's what you showed me, and I don't know, I was inspired by that, and I thought, okay, so there's this moment where we need to turn the page, sort of like in the course of the piece, and I said, oh, I got the man to do it, he's over there. And so and I wasn't sure that I wanted that to be a solo. But it is, and that's what it should be. You're right. You're right. But you know, you don't know when you're in the thick of it. You know, sometimes you second guess. Not because you weren't doing a beautiful job with the movement. It was just, is this how we turn the page? And I said, yeah. After a while, it was like, yeah.
Thank you for that.
And what about you, Zoe? You do a lot of pas de deux work.
I do. So, I mean, I think we're all humans in this piece, and I think I tell the story, each section has its own tone, and I help in the group stuff with that, but I have two pas de deux, and I think, I mean, from what I get from it, it's two people that, whether it's love or what it is, that connect in a way but aren't quite ready to fully be connected. So there's a lot of me running away from the man, which I think anyone can interpret that into whatever they're feeling in that moment. But the first pause in the section called the meltdown, and the paw work feels kind of aggressive and a push and pull, like we're melting down. And in the second paw, it's called But Not Broken, and I feel like we run to each other in center, and feels like we both went to our therapist. We're like, okay, I'm ready to be with you, and there's kind of, it's an endearing moment, it kind of sweeps by my feet, I'm spinning, and then we do this motif, and then he sets me down and we look at each other, and then, oh yeah.
And that's all you're getting after I think, you know, this is exactly the kind of look inside the imagination, because, I mean, that you're trying to divine something. I mean, it's a very specific process where you're trying to get out of the choreographer, like, what it is they want, both emotionally and physically, and then bring it to life with your own ideas, right? And then they guide you and respond, yes, no, and so you're just kind of, but it's all about listening and giving back. So it's just a really cyclical process. And then there's all this creative thinking that's involved too. It's not just steps and sounds and music and beats. It's all that you said, right? And so the other works on this program are the Four Seasons by Stanton, and it was last performed 17 years ago to the eponymous, 17 years ago, I said that right, the eponymous Vivaldi score. And there is a narrative weaved, woven throughout, basically the life story of a woman. And then we have Disha Zhang's The Lapse, which I think was last seen about 4 seasons ago. And I think it's a non-narrative, but I think there is a sort of a life cycle story to it about from the earth and life back into the earth, kind of very broad narrative. And then we have Balanchine's Tchaikovsky Paradis, which is just one of his jewels. It's just, we were just talking about out here before you all came in about how much we all loved watching it and dancing it, and it's one of Balanchine's really great short pieces. And then we're closing with Dwight's piece. So we have narrative, non-narrative, pure dance, like the full spectrum. And I would just love to hear from the two of you about how you navigate that. What do you love about it, or what do you find challenging about it, and what you're dancing on this program would be great.
Yeah, well, I'm dancing in Dwight's piece, A Lapse, and also Four Seasons. And I think what was nice about the creation process actually was that we worked on it quite kind of isolated from the other pieces. We had these kind of these very intense weeks where we pretty much just worked on your piece, and that was a really nice way to focus in on the language and the style and the movement. And then now, as we're taking it to stage, we're putting it all together, and so we'll do an hour of each ballet, and it'll how kind of you get taken from different worlds over the evening. And it's nice because they all tell different stories, and I think in this work it's nuanced. It's Dwight kind of mentioned things about even how your hands tell stories. Exposing your palm is a vulnerability, where closing it off is kind of a protection. Whereas in Four Seasons, it's a bit more of a visual thing where you see a life of a woman specifically, and you follow that. And then with The Lapse, that's a bit more of an abstract one. So yeah, it's like each one has its own challenges.
Yeah, it's really, this is why I wanted to dance here, because you get to do it all. We're really lucky that way. I get to go from 1 hour, being like quarter ballet girl, trying to rotate, trying to stay in line, to the next, being in Dwight's, feeling cool and groovy, but also like you gotta strain your knees. You can't. It's because you think it's like it's still very balletic. You have to shape your body. It's not like in A Lapse. It's very small little movements, and you're in this long baggy dress. So it's just fun to be in a company where you get to experience all different walks of art. It makes you feel special. Thanks.
Beautiful. Dwight, this is not your first time working with the composer David Rosenblatt, and this is an original score that you'll be hearing for the first time. And I loved it. I felt, I don't know, I just loved all it's very evocative, like really makes you feel things listening to it. And as well, you have a long working relationship with your designers for, resident designers for Complexions, Michael Korsch and Christine Darge. Darge, yeah. So can you give us a little bit of insight on the process, both with the score, which I know was a little bit challenging, and then also with your, how you, I mean, I think lighting in any new work is such a mysterious art for me. It is such the silent partner.
Really?
It can kill something or make something, or
We'll do it tomorrow morning.
yes. So tell us about those processes. And here you see some beautiful samples of the costumes. I think every dancer has a different costume. So these are Zoe and Saul's, I believe, or no? No, those are up there.
There we go.
Yes.
Some of the renderings, yeah. So David Rosenblatt, the composer, I worked with him for the very first time we worked on various projects, but a long time ago with Dinah Vishneva from MBT. She did her own tour called Beauty in Motion, I believe that was the name of it. And so I did work for her, and he's also done my Othello and numerous ballets. But we haven't worked together in a moment, and I thought coming here with Houston, I kind of wanted everything to be original as opposed to me finding music this time. I don't know, I don't even know why, but that was my sort of go-to.
Just roll like that. Like that.
I was so glad that we could do it, and so we worked together remotely. He lives in New York, but he's a touring performer. He tours with Barry Manilow. I probably shouldn't tell him that. But he's always on tour, so we are working back. Well, we know each other though. We've done numerous ballets, so we do have a language. So we had to get that all ready again because it had been a few years since we had done something original, because I've been doing a lot of sort of, scores that already exist. And it was back and forth, on the phone, on Zoom, listening. Then he would make changes, and I would bring them in, and I would turn it on. I wouldn't recognize the change he made, and they would be in the wrong place because the music wasn't where it was yesterday. So we had, that's like kind of the process. It's kind of like part of it, and it can feel frustrating sometimes because, I'm here and I'm ready. I just want to go forward, forward, forward. And he's back in New York saying, well, what about if, I said, we don't have any time for any more, what about? No, we're almost like brothers. We've known each other forever. So we have this language and we go back and forth, and I really think that he did a great job with the score. He did come for one day. He did come and sit in the studio for one day with the dancers and watch. But lots and lots of communication. Christine Darge, the costume designer, I don't even know for how long I've worked with her. It's been a long, long time. Michael Korsch since 1997, the lighting designer. He came to me straight out of college. I think he saw my Ave Maria or something. He says, can I design the light? I guess he didn't like the lighting design. That was up there, and he asked me could he design for Ave Maria, which is, it's a 4-minute duet, but it kind of launched my career into the ballet world. This 4-minute pas de deux. And he asked me, could he light it? And I said, sure, who are you? And sent me all of his stuff, and we started to become friends, and he came and he lit it, and he did such an incredible job, and I said, light everything. Light it all. Light the whole show, please. And we became, so we worked together quite a while as well.
And the orchestra is playing the new score.
Yeah.
And so, is there a steel guitar in the orchestra?
There is an electric guitar.
Yeah. I was
Could you tell?
yes,
Yeah.
on the recording. And
Yeah.
but then there's classical piano section. I mean, it's really, really interesting and wonderful. I can't wait to see all the components come
It's
together.
funny because David he was trained classically like all of us. Trained classically, but he really plays a lot of jazz and popular music, and he writes a lot. And his scores really go from, the most sort of classical thing that you might think you know through even into a Philip Glass, into real experimental. He just goes everywhere. So it's been very exciting to work with him.
So Zoe and Saul, tell us what you've learned from this experience that you are going to remember and take with you through to all the other work that's ahead of you.
I mean, I feel like this is a new vocabulary I've learned in a way. And the partnering for me especially, it's very like different partnering, and my partner's much more experienced than I am, so I've gotten to learn a lot in that realm as well. And yeah, I mean, this whole experience I'll take with me. I feel like I've grown as an artist, and hopefully I'll just keep on growing with what I can get.
Yeah, it's just been a wonderful experience. I think one of the big takeaways for me has been Dwight kind of talks about after we do a run and he's giving kind of the corrections and stuff. He says a lot about being human and bringing yourself to the piece. And I feel like as dancers we often try and be something for the choreographer and for the people at the front of the room. And what's been so wonderful in this process is he's asking us to, instead of being somebody else, trying to look within and be ourselves and bring that to the piece. And I think I'm going to bring that with me and let that kind of transfer over all styles and all kind of mediums, because with the more modern works, that can be a lot easier to do than with the classical ones where, you know, hundreds of amazing ballet dancers have danced that role before you or something like that, and you feel you have to be like them or like the way they did it. And so I think through this experience I'm going to try and look within a bit more and bring myself to the piece.
Make your own footsteps in the sand. Yeah. There's something liberating about that when you're the only ones that have ever done this piece. And forever and ever, you will have been the ones, all of you, that created this work. And there's something really special about that.
Yeah.
And that confidence and sense of self is then what you can apply to works where you're stepping into the shoes of others, and and then you still walk the way you walk. You just
And it's that agency that they can take that initiative. I think when you're doing a role, and not to discount any of the other type of roles where you go into something, say you're playing a maiden or you are a mistress, say one of the mistresses. It's already been done. You know the characterization has been set up. Now, what you bring to it might be different than this young lady over here or this person over there. But what we're asking with this work, with the lightning round or some of the other more original works made for you, is you have to show up as yourself. And that can be actually harder, right?
more vulnerable.
You're much more vulnerable because we are actually getting a sense of being able to, you have to expose a piece of yourself. Yeah, which is what we're working on now, trying to get that all out, which the dancers are really starting to do now that, once you lay down all the steps and they know where they're going, the timing, the music, it's not new anymore. It's kind of, they have it. They have it now. So that's what's so exciting is this part leading up to June 6th, I think is the premiere. That is what's great, is now watching them right here where they are right now. This is the part. Now we got all the steps, we got them all done. But now I have to watch the human beings turn this into something very vibrant, because it doesn't exist without you. It's just a bunch of steps. Hopefully just some cool music, and maybe there's a cool step. But it's really about you. It really is about the artist.
And Dwight, just final question for you before we open to the audience, but if you think back to your first work as a choreographer, which, well, I would say maybe after you were doing routines at school, but like, you know, when you first sort of started being commissioned as a choreographer, when you and Desmond started Complexions, like, and then where you are now 30 years later, and the evolution of your choreography, where do you see this piece? Is it a linear, or is there any kind of cyclical pattern, or how do you see the evolution of your choreographic voice?
Let's see. I think maybe as a young choreographer, of course, you don't know what you don't know until you just don't know. And I was also very excited to do it. I loved being on stage, and as a performer, I absolutely loved performing. But I think I love this even more. I think that I found what it is I love to do, which is to create things, and direct, and also to teach. Those are things that really mean a lot to me. And so, I don't know, it just, over the years, things have just evolved with the dancers, again, directing the process. And me trusting that. In the beginning, I didn't trust anything. I wanted to micromanage every step, da, 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 da. You know, that's how you are when you're young and you're sort of starting out. You don't know. Now, as I say, I really do trust. Trust, you said that earlier, trust is such a big factor. And I knew probably by day 2, this was going to be we were going to have good trust here. I could feel it because they were so committed to what it was. So I think over the years, my process has grown in that way, where I'm trusting even more so. And yeah.
I'd like to open up to the audience.
This is kind of a nuts and bolts question. So you come into a company that's already focused on preparing for maybe 1 or 2 other productions. You introduce this, and then I guess over time you build on it, but they're still doing other productions and focused, like right now, they're right in the middle of a run. Okay, how do you keep from overwhelming the company? There's just so much, and how do the artists compartmentalize that so that they can make that change? Boom, boom, boom.
How do I not overwhelm them? I don't know. I think there were days where you guys might have felt the load was really a lot, because you were doing Meyerling at the same time, a couple of my visits here, and some of the other things. I don't really, you know, like, I don't mean to sound weird, but I don't necessarily, when I'm in this capacity as a guest choreographer, I love that part, because then I don't have to think about the big picture, the rest of the pie, which is what Julie and Stanton have to do. And so they're putting the schedule together, knowing that it's going to be, but that's the life of a dancer. You want to go from Balanchine rehearsal into a Forsyth rehearsal. Oh, over here to Meyerling. Oh, over here to, yeah, you want that. It's hard on your body and your mind, and you have to stay organized. I'll let you guys speak on that, but that's what you want, I think.
You have 6 hours a day, and you just try to go into each hour, whatever it is, with a blank slate, and you give it your all, and then you go home and take a bath. And then you do it again. But we're used to it, I mean, yeah. And sometimes you have an hour off, and sometimes your load is lighter or heavier. I mean, I'm next to principals and first soloists of Dwight's piece that are doing everything and running tripod, running it. And I'm like, oh my God, how do they do it? Because my load is a lot lighter than theirs, but still as overwhelming.
really just also how amazing the body is at remembering what to do. I think maybe that's just down to years of practice and training, but yeah, when you're in a Dwight rehearsal, you know the style, you know the steps, so then you just kind of jump back into it, and it just, yeah, it depends who's in the front of the room, and your body just knows what to do. Yeah.
It's training. I saw a show the other day about this solo concert pianist, and she was doing a matinee performance, and the orchestra started, and she had learned the wrong concerto. And her face, her whole body of face, and she just looked at the conductor. And he, when he realized what was going on, he just, as he was conducting the play, just talked her through it, and was like, you played this last year, conduct, 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 I'm sure you can do it, and just do it. And she's like, okay, I'll do the best I can. And she just, like what dancers do, she just pulled it out of her body. She just remembered the notes, and she played them in that mind-body connection that we work on, starting with pliés every day. And so that's why the class is so important, because we're training our body to do what we want it to do. And whether it's learning material and executing to the point where you're not, it becomes so natural. And so I think it's not just in dance, it just looks so great on us. But others have the skill. It just looks different in dance, whether it's an actor with lines, or musician with musical notes, or mathematicians or scientists, or on and on and on. So
I have a question for Dwight. So how long did it take you to create the costumes? Did you do it all before you came? And then also compare it to something like Meyer Lane. That is a huge production, and the costumes were stunning. Also, comment on like the budget. Are you restricted by that as a choreographer, or what do you think about all that?
Yes. So costumes, we did not know, when I say we, myself and Christine Darch, who we work in a very collaborative way. I did not know what I wanted. I tend to like to use the body in a sculptural way, so that the shaping of their body, so I knew that this wasn't a ballet where they might have on a whole lot of, extra layers and things like that. I really wanted to see the body. I want to see the sculpture of the movement through the space. We could not decide on the color. We could not decide on the silhouette at first. She had Christine had many, many different ideas, and she just kept funneling them to me, and then something sort of hit, and I was like, it needed to be more minimal, and then we ended up in the silver, white, black palette for that. There's always budget restrictions, always, everywhere, at all times, no matter what. I have felt none of that. I don't really know. I mean, I do, but we're good. There was no, you know what I mean? There was no sort of struggle there at all. There might have been sort of a little bit of concern about how involved the new composition was, the new score. We talked through that. Everyone felt comfortable, and we moved forward. And it was very, very simple, actually. But that might have been the only thing. And what was the other part of the question?
Just like comparing like something like your production with something huge like
Yeah.
And then working with like Christine Darch too, because I'm sure she was over in Myra, right?
Yeah.
And so like on a smaller scale versus something a little big, I mean, how much time do you think yours takes versus like something else? Does it take a lot of time before you arrive, or after you arrive it's easier with smaller piece or anything?
Right. Well, I don't think that Christine Darch did Meyerling, though, right? No. the different designer for that one. We did a lot of work before, but what we were saying was, we would talk on the phone, I let her hear a little piece of music, and at that time the music would just be literally like, I don't know, 3 or 4 bars, and just sounds, ideas. And she's like, I don't care, I want to hear whatever you have. And then I started to do a little bit of movement in New York with Jillian, my assistant, who's also in my company, and I started to just make some language, some vocabulary. I didn't want to make too much, because I also wanted to make it here. And I would send it to Christine Darch as well. And she would look at the movement, just like the direction of how they're moving. And then that got her mind moving. So that was all ahead of time. Then we got here, and I started making things, and I would send her sequences almost every day. She would get the dailies, basically. Like, what happened after today. And we videotape, she'd see it. And so it evolved into what you see now, over time.
Thank you. Dwight, you mentioned that back then you didn't know what you know now. I'm curious what you would tell your younger self and what you would tell Zoe and Saul.
You guys, Houston, but you guys have some hard questions. What would I tell my younger self? Calm down. I had a lot of energy as a young guy. I was sort of one of those guys that was just all over the place. My hair would be every color in the book. I was one of those guys that's just all around. Not very unfocused. I was a musician, and I wasn't really, did not have the discipline for it, because I just didn't have the discipline for it. But then I found dance, and dance just kind of directed me and told me everything. So I would tell myself to be less impetuous and to actually calm down and focus your energy.
Which you've done beautifully.
I hope so. And Saul and Zoe.
Children.
Our children. I adore these guys. Hard for me to say anything. I was so happy when they said, oh, these are 2 of the dancers that come by. You could have picked any 2, I have to be honest with you, but these guys are so special. Kind of what Julie said earlier, well, she asked you the question about what did you learn from this experience? I would say connect everything. Connect it all, you know? And also, make sure you live your life as a human being. You need to live, love, lose, all of those things. Really, you guys know, we talked about this in rehearsal a little bit, is that one of the things that I learned from the mentors, the people's shoulders that I stand on, was you will have nothing to bring to your art if you don't live your life. Mr. Ailey Alvin used to start every rehearsal period, so when you come back, new year starts, new season starts, and the first thing he would do was sit us on the floor and say, what'd you do over the summer? He wanted to know. He also would tell us over and over and over, get out there, live your life. You know, I would catch Mr. Ailey uptown in New York City, in Harlem, sitting, researching, watching maybe some of the homeless people. He was very concerned with that, so you would watch him. So I learned a lot from that. And so what I take from these great voices that gave me so much is to say to you, live your life and bring it all back to the work, so then they will come and experience all of that richness, and your work just gets better and better and more, compelling, I would say. I don't know. I think so.
Very well. Beautiful. Any more? One final question?
So you mentioned that you enjoy teaching. Are you currently teaching, and what kind of class do you teach?
Yes, I am currently teaching. I'm actually a professor at Chapman University in Orange County. And I also teach, and I also have an academy. Complexions has an academy. We have a technique we've coined it called NEEK, and it's contemporary ballet. I also teach straight ballet, and I teach modern. Most times nowadays I teach just contemporary ballet because that's what's asked. So it's basically a ballet class with an upper body. It looks at more like coordination, ignition, like how you get into something. It has more contemporary and modern sort of philosophy laid down on classical ballet. Yes.
Is the same cast for all 6 shows?
To be determined. Is that it? We have one more hand up there. Is that okay?
Yeah, sorry, it's a lot of procedural questions, but very curious about the selection process, because obviously it's not your company. You're coming in kind of blind. Do you get notes from Julie and Stanton, or did you watch film? Did you kind of come in with a shopping list, or the entire company auditions for you? You go through everyone, or like how does that work? And then specifically, what drew you to Zoe and Saul? And you mentioned Yuriko and Chase.
Normally, I would come here and probably witness a program, and Stanton and I actually talked about that at one point, and then our schedules never worked. So I would have come in and maybe watched a program over at the theater and got a sense of the company and maybe started to get to know the dancers. My selection process, that was the hardest part, to be honest with you here. Because I really wanted I wanted to work, I like workshop-y type formats where we get in the room and we just work and make stuff. And so it was difficult. It was difficult. And because the dancers are also good, but then I also knew that we needed partnerships, so then it was about making sure that the partnerships worked, heights, and all of that. Different sizes, and just trying to make sure that it was cohesive. I did speak to Stanton and Julie, and they gave me their feedback, but honestly, it wasn't like, choose her, choose him, none of that really happened. I would ask them about a dancer, and they would give me their feedback on what they saw, but basically I had pretty much free reign to pick whoever I wanted to be in the piece, which was great. And that happens that way most times these days.
Basically, our process is that any guest that's coming in or staging a ballet or creating a ballet, that they have 3 days with the full company, and so they're able to, everybody has the opportunity to learn phrases and get to know, develop a relationship with the choreographer, develop that line of communication. And through that process, then the choreographer or stager then makes their cast selections. Occasionally there's questions. Of course, we believe in all of our dancers, so if there's something that they're not seeing that we know is there, then we'll reassure them, like, yeah, this person, they'll come through for you. They may be a little slower learning material, but be in there, or just little things like that. But I think it's a wonderful opportunity for everyone to have the experience for 3 days of working with a new choreographer, and then if they've been able to inspire that relationship and promise of delivering something really interesting, then they get the opportunity to be in the cast. But so this is 32 plus dancers, almost half the company in this piece, and everybody I think has benefited from the entire experience.
Yeah, I think you're right though. It is very difficult even in those 3 days to see all you can see, especially when you're making things, because my mind is on generating new, innovative material, but I also have to pay attention to the artists so that we can get a cast. And then what's also helpful is my assistant and the rehearsal director, Stephen Woodgate, who they assign a rehearsal director to to your rehearsals, and they help. It takes a village to get it all done. It's not just one thing, but definitely it's very hard to say, okay, after 3 days, this is who I want. And it becomes a process even from there.
So I want to thank you, Dwight, for taking another evening to share with us about your beautiful work and your history and your career. And personally, thank you for being here. It's so special for me. Thank you, Zoe and Saul. I know it's been a long season, and you're near the end, and it's just going to be an exciting finish, and we can't wait to see you in the whole program. And I want to thank you all for making my first season at Houston Ballet so special. And I felt so welcomed, and you all as a community are so generous, and I'm so appreciative of your support of Houston Ballet. It's truly a remarkable organization. I'm so proud to be a part of it. So thank you, Jasmine and team, for everything, and we'll see you the next 3 weekends at the Wortho. Okay.